basically want you to, like the land claims, you know, they're not giving you nothing. Anyways, the exercise of martial law jurisdiction within the several states is a usurpation of the common law and subjects the sovereign body to a jurisdiction that has no right to exist within the states. Now, this is all quotes out of that book, Diet versus Turner, all that book, Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment. And here, listen to this. If a citizen acquires the same legal status, artificial character as those protected by the amendment through the operation of some statutory law of Congress, then said citizen may be brought within the venue of the amendment as a statutory juristic person. By this means, citizens' birthrights become of no effect and their rights are reduced to inferior character of statutory civil rights, mere legislative privileges. Now think about it, isn't that exactly what's going on? That's what the driver's license is, right? Because they go on, by this means become a, and then the citizen may be brought within the venue of the amendment as a statutory juristic person.
That's if you acquire the same legal status as a...
When you get a social insurance number and when you get a driver's license, then you're just, that's exactly what you're doing.
Natural person.
And civil rights are mere legislative privileges. They're nothing to scream about. They're just legislative privileges. Bank of Canada notes are military script. Bank of Canada notes are legal tender. Bank of Canada notes are forced loans. Anyone who uses them are forced to loan the government money. Bank of Canada notes are promissory notes. When you pay for something with a promissory note, you create a usufruct. If the debt of Canada was paid for, there'd be no paper money in circulation. Think about that.
But it can't be paid off.
Sorry?
It can't be paid off. Not
Of course
with money.
not. Of course
Not
not.
with
Because
debt.
nobody created the interest. Nobody created the interest. It's physically impossible to pay off the debt.
That's right, mathematically impossible.
Right.
Yeah, if everyone gave every single dollar they had, it wouldn't even come close to what's actually so-called owed.
Right.
And that's just the interest.
Yeah.
Evidence of martial law rule. Income tax is collected under military authority. Government seizes money without a court order. Government seizes property without a court order. Government seizes bank accounts without a court order. As we have said, the personal income tax is collected under a military venue within a martial law jurisdiction. Federal Reserve notes are military script circulated with a military venue. The problem is the people don't understand how the entire United States is covered by a military venue. Under the Social Security Act that was brought into existence 10 federal regional areas. These 10 federal regional areas are the same as a military base. It is not unconstitutional to circulate military script on a military base as the base is considered to be a military venue. Military script cannot circulate in the civil jurisdiction of the several states. To get around this constitutional bar, the Congress, via the Social Security Act, created 10 military venues called federal regional areas. The problem the Congress realized was that Congress could restructure the government agencies into these federal regional areas. The people could not be identified to be within this military venue, but by their own consent. You have to consent. The solution was to create another military venue which would trick people to voluntarily accept recognition that they are within a military venue. Congress solved this problem by creating zip code. The zip code divides the United States into 10 military venues called national areas. When a citizen receives mail from an agency of the federal government, such as the IRS, and the return address of the federal agency is the district within the regional area the letter was sent from, and on the address of the citizen it was sent to a national area, a zip code, in which he received the correspondence from the IRS. In other words, the correspondence was sent from one federal regional area, military venue, to one of the national areas, another military venue. Taxing districts are established within one of the federal regional areas, which places the collection of taxes under a martial law jurisdiction. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but what they do is, in the States, you rarely ever get a letter from the IRS that was sent from the same state that you're in. Okay? It's always sent from a foreign state. And if you get it from the same state you're living in, it's completely different. In other words, there's people in Texas that I know that do the 1099 OID process, and it works really well. Because they live in Texas, and what they do is they go down to the local IRS office, and they deal directly with the local IRS right there in Dallas, Texas. And it works really well. But when you start dealing with the IRS office in Maryland, you see what I'm saying? That's foreign jurisdiction, and that's completely different. And it brings you into this. You see what I'm saying? But if it's in your state, and so that's what you have to do if you really want it to work. And that's why I don't do it, quite frankly. I think they're just a bunch of thieves anyways. But I know people that do it in Texas, and it works.
It's not the one where you have to claim that you are a U.S. taxpayer in order to collect.
Well, your straw man has to collect.
Yeah.
I would never do that anyways.
You're claiming abandoned property.
Yeah, with the 1099 OID, you're basically, yeah, it's a long story. Anyways, evidence that there's a military occupation. Military script is circulated for money. Police use a rank structure of captain, lieutenant, sergeant. Police refer to us as civilians. Courts presume everything. Curfew is strictly under martial law jurisdiction. You ever heard of a curfew? I know they do that to kids all the time. The state regional areas under metro government provide the military venue for the peace officers to enforce the martial law jurisdiction. Think about that. That's what they did, is they create these metro police, like the Toronto Metro Police Department or the Lethbridge Regional Police Department. There's a war over the inclusion of civil law upon the common law. The court in Diamond versus Harris calls civil law, statutory law, superior equity. And so it is, and here's the court case that supports that. It is difficult to see how the courts of the state are to ignore the common law rule as a rule of decision when it is made so by statute and adopt a civil law even though it had the merit of superior equity. So what they're saying essentially is that the civil laws is they're trying to bring civil law over common law. In the meantime, civil law, which is the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule, equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is a law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what's called equity in its place. And that's what they've done. And look at this. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. Have you ever heard that? It's been replaced by civil law, by statutes. They would be more truthful if they said that there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law, and that's true. Matter of fact, there are martial law statutes, and they'll talk about it here. And look at this. The Alberta Judicature Act, Section 15. In all matters in which there is any conflict or variance between the rules of equity and common law, the rules of equity prevail. So they're saying that.
It exists.
Well, and that equity supersedes common law in the courts. In the courts.
Most money.
Yeah, basically.
I was denied access into a courthouse because of some Judicature Act section something when I went with Robin, because I didn't have government ID. I told them I didn't own it.
Yeah.
That's violating Section 9 of the Criminal Code, which is contempt of court, interfering with access to the courts.
Yeah.
Martial law is really no law at all. Dictatorship. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power, a proceeding which requires to be followed by an act of indemnity when the disturbances are inept. And that's the Attorney General's position of February 3rd, 1857. The court shall, subject to this section, take cognizance of and judicially proceed upon all manner of captures, seizures, prizes, reprisals made under the authority of Her Majesty and right of Canada of all ships, aircrafts, or goods, and shall hear and determine and shall, according to the course of admiralty and the law of nations, adjudge and condemn all such ships, aircraft, or goods as belong to any enemy country, or the citizens or subjects thereof, or any other persons inhabiting any of the countries or territories or dominions of and enemy country or that are otherwise condemnable as prize. See, they're operating under the Prize Act. That's exactly what they're doing. They're stealing everything they can. U.S. Declaration of Independence. Now, these are phrases taken out of the Declaration of Independence that's talking about martial law being imposed that resulted in the War of Independence. It says he has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Well, that sounds like martial law. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving us a sense to their act of pretended legislation. Well, pretended legislation, think about that. That's like saying color of law, right? It's not real law. And a jurisdiction foreign to ours. That's, again, martial law. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. For depriving us, in many cases, of the benefit of trial by jury. Again, that's all martial law. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province and establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies. Absolute rule, martial law. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. Martial law. For protecting them by a mock trial. Martial law. This is taken from the causes and necessities for taking up arms. War of Independence again. Statutes have been passed for extending the jurisdiction of the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty beyond their ancient limits, for depriving us of the custom and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Despotism is martial law again. Dictatorship. Every nation on the planet is under martial law. Every nation on the planet is bankrupt. I will show unto thee judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Isn't that, think about that, isn't that talking about martial law, right? Sitteth upon many waters, great whore sells themselves for money. Sitteth upon many waters, well, martial law, which is admiralty maritime law, water, right? The kings of the earth have committed fornication. Well, the kings of the earth certainly are. I mean, they're in illicit activities with admiralty maritime law, you know, shoving it down everybody's throat. Inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. In other words, all the money that's being made because of this. They're creating money, the International Monetary Fund, and all this money that's in circulation. Everybody's getting rich. With debt, that's right. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. That's the great whore again, right? What city sits on 7 mountains? This has been going on from the beginning of time. There's 2 classes of citizens. Remember, we were talking about that. The stranger that dwelleth among you shall be as one born among you. 2 classes, stranger and born. And thou shalt love him as thyself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they enslaved the children of Israel, as they made up persons, strangers, and then they were able to enslave them. You shall have one ordinance both for the stranger and for him that was born in the land. 2 classes of citizens. Love ye therefore the strangers, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. This is, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother. Usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that's lent upon usury. And to the stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. Well, so you can't borrow money unless you get a social insurance number. You can't get a credit card. You can't do anything, right?
Stranger in that context means strange to God's law. They weren't following God's law. That's what that means.
But the thing is that as a stranger was also someone that wasn't born in the land, because it talks about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All of this martial law is for Ford and GM. If you're a Ford or GM employee, then you're a slave for Ford or GM. If you want to be free, then we the people have to quit letting Ford and GM run the country. You want to be free or you want to be a slave? Is there a price that makes your freedom too expensive? Do you know who you are? The current government is de facto. It's essentially a gang of pirates who are engaged in obtaining some prize on the high seas of commerce. The only thing saving us is the fact that they have an oath of office. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is the government that is owned and operated by the people. This is de jure government. I have seen Supreme Court cases that said that the reason the government had immunity from a lawsuit is because it was de jure government. And for one of the people to file a lawsuit against the government is like suing yourself. And you can't do that. They will continue to violate your rights more and more every day until we, the people, decide to take our government back. We have to accept responsibility and start doing something. They have taken away the grand jury. They've taken away the common law jury. They've taken away the 12-man jury. The juries you see these days are a complete farce. Common law has all the solutions we need. Common law is we the people. Common law is God's laws found in the Bible. Common law is 800 years of jury trial decisions in Old England. Grand jury. Sections 52 and 61 of the Magna Carta provide for a grand jury. Grand jury operates in the county. You need a de jure county judge to swear in the grand jurors. Hold an election for the county judge. Now, just because, like Edmonton, okay? Edmonton is a municipal district. Well, there's a county here too, okay? Because the county here was here before. And so, yes, all you can see around here is this municipal district, but there's still a county here, and you would still operate it as a county, okay? And so you still have an election. And, you know, I heard stories about the old days, they used to elect judges in Canada. And there's a story I heard about a judge in Calgary that convened a posse of 1,500 men to protect this guy that the Canadian Armed Forces was trying to draft. It was either during the First World War or the Second World War. And this judge convened a posse of 1,500 men to protect him because he's saying you can't draft him. Yeah, I think that's great.
Under what grounds?
Huh?
Do you remember what the grounds were?
No idea. But the point is that maybe he wasn't a Canadian. Maybe he was just an Albertan or something. See what I'm saying? I mean, they don't have any authority over, they only have authority over persons. They don't have authority over living souls. I don't know what the grounds was, but this judge convened a posse of 1,500 men to protect this guy, and so I don't expect that he ever got drafted. Anyways, so that's they used to elect judges here. So you just get together. You don't have to announce it to everybody, okay? Because the people over here, they're not sovereign, okay? They don't have a clue, and so they don't need to know about it. And so you announce it amongst the people that you know that are sovereign or want to be, and you then you hold an election, and whoever wins the election gets to be the judge, and then the judge swears in the grand jurors. That's it, and then the grand jury does its job. The grand jury just runs by itself, and the same thing with common law juries. With the common law jury, there's no judge in the common law trial. Okay, there's the common law jury calls the witnesses, questions the witnesses, determines the law and the facts of the matter, and even pronounces sentence. There's no judge in there. What happened is originally there was many times on the common law juries there was jurists who didn't understand certain points of law, so they would bring someone in to sit in on the trial to advise the jury on different points of law. That's all. Okay, he was just a jurist who had been on a lot of juries, and he was there to advise the jury only. And so what happened though is these governments got corporations, so they had to have an attorney, and then because the government had an attorney, then other people got an attorney, and meanwhile the jury's getting pushed back and back, and you know what a judge is called? You know what a judge is called? A judge is called a jurist. So anyways, meanwhile the juries get pushed back and back to the point now that the juries, you know, are withheld evidence from them and all sorts of stuff, and you know, again, that's not common law. Common law, the jury runs everything. The jury doesn't have to take instructions from the judge. The jury does whatever they want to do, and they could you know, fix that judge up if they want. Anyways, a grand jury brings an indictment based on a majority vote. A grand jury indictment is saying that there's probable cause. That's all a grand jury indictment says, is there's probable cause to hold trial. A grand jury indictment proceeds to a common law jury for trial. When I was living in Uxbridge, Ontario, there was a traffic court with a coat of arms in Pickering. Across the street, there was an unused courtroom with flags hanging. And I thought that was interesting. I got a seatbelt ticket. And so I went to court, and across the street I was looking for the courthouse, and I saw this courthouse, and I went over there and looked, and it wasn't the one, obviously, because it had de jure flags. It was sitting there empty. And it was right across the street from this de facto courthouse. And you know, I think that you could use Robin's procedure, some administrative procedure, on your Crown Attorney, and I'll bet you, the government, I'll bet you they'll give you a place to hold your grand jury meetings, and your common law court, and I'll bet you they'll give you one, and it'd certainly be worth asking the question. So, anyways, when I was in Texas, there was a municipal corporation, a city in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that went and violated somebody's rights. This was back in the 90s. I heard about this. This was back in the 90s. This municipal corporation violated somebody's rights. They went and brought it to a common law grand jury. That common law grand jury indicted them, the city, and then they put it on trial, and they held a trial with the common law jury, and they convicted them. And this city figured it was a big joke, and they didn't pay any attention to it, and didn't show up for the trial, and they got convicted. And so then they went and sent a copy of this conviction to Standard & Poor's and Dun & Bradstreet, and that city couldn't get bonding, they couldn't get insurance, they couldn't get funding for any of their freeways and football stadiums or nothing. They couldn't get nothing. And so they went and got hired an attorney and took it into the de facto courts to ask the court to overturn that conviction. And you know what the judge said in that case? The judge said, I can't do that. He said, if I did that, I'd lose my bond. So again, if you do it right, they will recognize it. You have no idea the power you have. You don't know who you are. There's no judge in a common law courtroom. The common law jury calls the witnesses, questions the witnesses, determines the law and the facts in the matter, and even pronounces sentence. Decision from a common law jury is not subject to appeal. The fact that you can make an appeal in the de facto courts is proof that they're de facto. The decisions of a common law jury must be unanimous. A common law jury consists of 12 members. Many times some members of a common law jury didn't understand certain points of law. So they would ask someone who had been on a lot of common law juries, a jurist, to sit in on a trial to advise them on different points of law. That's what a judge is now. A common law jury can do anything they want. Why don't we take another break? It's 5 o'clock, so we'll hit that little cafeteria here for the last time. Now I've got some, we're at the common law jury now. So many times some members of a common law jury didn't understand certain points of law. So they would ask someone who had been on a lot of common law juries, a jurist, to sit in on a trial to advise the jury on different points of law. And that's what became a judge. Common law jury can do anything they want. Common law convictions in Texas were sent to Standard & Poor's. I was telling you about that. And I was also telling you that I think we could use some of Robin Boulanger's procedures that he's developed to help them to provide a place for a common law jury to meet. I'll bet you they would. In order to have a grand jury and a common law jury, you need a common law judiciary. You need to hold an election among the sovereigns and elect a chief judge for the county. Chief judge would then swear in the grand jurors and the common law jurists. And since you're having an election, you should also elect some other officers of your county. Even though there's a municipal district of Edmonton, there's still a county. When I was in Ontario, I was in the regional municipality of Durham, okay, and there's a Durham County too. And I used to put on my paperwork, Durham County, okay? Now this is one thing you have to understand. In my criminal complaints, you have to be careful about this. This is my, no, listen. Here it is. I don't say province of Alberta, okay? Because province of Alberta is a corporation. Okay, all I say is Alberta. And then I don't say city of Lethbridge. Okay, city of Lethbridge is a corporation. Matter of fact, I don't say any Lethbridge city or anything. But I do say Lethbridge County. Okay, that's the de jure entity. It's not County of Lethbridge. Okay, there's actually two entities. There's a Lethbridge County and there's a County of Lethbridge, and they're both down there right now. You can go down there and find them both. And so you have to understand what the corporation is and what's de jure, okay? And you have to be careful about what you say and everything. I mean, it's all in what you say. And I've got it now to the point that I get letters from the Solicitor General acknowledging that I'm the king, okay? But it's taken a lot of time, and you got to be careful everything you say, because sometimes you say things and you don't realize it, but you're telling them you're a corporation, and you cannot speak out of both sides of your mouth. It's got to be one or the other. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out. So, there is an Edmonton County, and I'll bet you'll be able to find a phone number for them. I'll bet you'll be able to even find a place where they're operating at. But even if they're not, doesn't matter. Then we're the Edmonton County. Okay, who are you? Do you know who you are? We can do anything we want.
So we can make an Edmonton County Recorder's Office.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's perfect. Absolutely, absolutely. The typical tactic of the enemy is divide and conquer. That's what they do. They'll sit there and they'll drive little divisions in us. We have to overlook our differences and focus on what the real goal is, which is freedom for everyone. And that's the end of that one. I guess we're done quicker than I thought. Now, do we have any questions?
At the beginning, you were stating that there was a court case, I think, that said we were all kings and queens. Do you have that court case?
Sure. I'm full of a bunch of court cases that talk about that.
If you look up in Black's Law of Sovereign, it will tell you that you are the supreme power.
Yeah.
So, but it's only what you believe you have. If you don't act on it, you won't have it.
Okay, well, here's some court cases.
Have you anything on Jim Odeshaw? Lawyer?
What?
Jim Odeshaw?
I never heard of him.
He's a lawyer, big lawyer in town, big buck man.
I never heard of him. Anyways, how about this one? At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people. And they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint citizens, joint tenants in the sovereignty. The words people of the United States and citizens are